Thank you. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's a great pleasure for me to be invited for this talk. And first of all, I want to thank all the team that arranged this meeting. And first of all, Mr. Louis Skyner, thank you for the hospitality. The staff in Tashkent has arranged everything for us to arrange this talk. And thank you, Rosa. Thank you to the whole team that made this meeting possible. And of course, many thanks to all the people who came to this meeting. And I must say that for me, it's very exciting. And well, I want to meet all your wishes to know more about the Savitsky Museum. I see that for me it will be difficult to give the information so that not, to avoid repetitions and reiterations, because I feel that you are enough informed about the museum, about its importance, international importance, and I am very happy to hear this. So for me, no need to give the introduction about the importance of this collection in international terms. It's obvious. And of course, since it's the Uzbek British Society, no need to tell where the museum is located. And I don't want to speak now explaining that this area in the northwest of Uzbekistan, known for Aral Sea ecological crisis, so that people understand where Nukus is located. No need to speak about this. I just want to remember that the British mass media has made a great contribution into the popularity of the Nukus collection in the world. During the last 25 years, many British leading newspapers, BBC, Sunday Times, Times Literary Supplement, whatever it is, they were writing exciting stories about the phenomenon of the Nukus Museum. And the last important information was on the Telegraph 5 years ago. It was the rating of the top 10 extraordinary tourist that was in this list. So for me, it's I'm very pleased to remind about this thing to all of you who came to this meeting. We will start this talk, nevertheless, with demonstrating the buildings of the museum, the new ensemble of it. For those of you who visited Nukus, you can recognize it. At the same time, I must say that the buildings of the museum have become recognizable for many residents of Uzbekistan because it has become a brand of Caracal, Pakistan. I mean, the museum in Nukus is now the brand not only of Caracal, Pakistan, but of the whole country. And next slide, please. We spoke already, next one please, about the contribution of international mass media into popularization of the collection. Next one please. And all these efforts of the museum team and journalists of the world has mapped the museum on the number 4 in Uzbekistan, I mean on the touristic map of Uzbekistan. Of course, Bukhara, Samarkand and Khiva are the leading touristic destinations in Uzbekistan. And now the 4th most popular touristic destination in Uzbekistan is the Savitsky Museum. You can see some photographs of the tourists coming to Nukus from all parts of the world. And among them, we have people who are interested in arts, politicians, diplomats, very important persons who would never come to Nukus, which was never a touristic destination in the past. And now, after the independence of Uzbekistan, when the country was open, we started to develop tourism thanks to the Nukus collection, thanks to the Savitsky collection. Next one, please. We have many tourists coming not only in the planes, but even in their automobiles, the houses on wheels, and the very diverse groups of visitors. Next one, please. Well, to start the story of the museum, I would like to invite you to the ancient history of this area. And the area is called historically Ancient Khwarezm, where Caracal, Pakistan is located nowadays. In the past, it was the territory of 3 states, Khiva, part of Turkmenistan, and now Caracal, Pakistan Republic. So we share the common territory, which was in the past Ancient Khwarezm. Next one, please. And you can see some of the most interesting monuments of ancient times, which are also touristic sites. And together with the museum, people go to see these fortresses and sand castles. Next one, please, which date back to ancient times. Last centuries BC, first centuries AD, and they are really magnificent. They are becoming also known to international community together with the museum. In the past, people didn't have access to them, except archaeologists. Next one, please. Who discovered these magnificent ruins, which are known now for many art historians, Toprak Kala, Jampik Kala. Some are of Zoroastrian time, some date back to Kushan Empire period, and the medieval period also is represented. Next one, please. So we show you just a few of them, and to see the beauty of these magnificent ruins, we demonstrate you how they look not only in the daylight, but also in the night time, under the starry night, starry sky, sorry. And now tourists can have, can spend nights in the yurt there, in the yurts there. Next one. The person who discovered this ancient civilization is an outstanding Russian Soviet historian, Tolstoy, professor, academician. He was the leader of Khwarezm archaeological ethnographic expedition that started excavations in 1930s, and until the disintegration of the Soviet Union, this team was active. At the present moment, Caracal archaeologists continue the excavations, and there are still a lot to discover. It's very interesting that Tolstoy has links to the British scientific community, because he was invited to give talks on ancient Horizon in Cambridge University. He knew many outstanding British archaeologists like Mr. Max Marlowe, the outstanding archaeologist, the husband of great Agatha Christie. He knew Professor Henning, who put contribution into deciphering of Arabic scripts that were excavated in ancient Horizon. And there were a lot of links to the English historic community, which were founded in the 50s, 60s. Next one, please. The museum, why I am mentioning this name? Because the museum is linked to all these subjects, both in the direct sense and metaphorically. Next one. So Savitsky was the member of this archaeological team. He came to Caracal, Pakistan as the artist of the group, who was making documentation of the finds, and he was painting the fortresses and landscape around these fortresses, the desert. And we have hundreds of his paintings, both in our collection and in the archives of the Russian Academy of Sciences up to now. These materials were published recently, and they present a great interest to anyone who is interested both in the story or archaeology or ethnography, anthropology of this area. I should say that this team was very well known in the former Soviet Union, because it consisted not only of archaeologists, but geomorphologists, geologists, art historians were actively participating in this group. And well, of course, it was a kind of competition with English archaeologists who were known for their discoveries in Egypt, and the Soviet state supported this group greatly, giving a lot of funds and supplying it with all the necessary things. We know that first time in world archaeology, the photographs from the air were used in this group. And Savitsky was also part of this team. So now you can see his images, the one on the left, exactly the time when he came to Caracal, Pakistan in the 50s, and his last photograph made in 1984, just 2 weeks before he died. Next one, please. I will remind very briefly about the origin of Savitsky and how he happened to come to Caracal, Pakistan. To understand his motivation, inspirations, and his mission, we must know his family background. He was born in the family of the great scholar on Slavic studies, Professor Timofey Florinsky. You can see his photograph in the center. He was the dean of the Slavic Studies faculty in Kiev University, and Savitsky was born in Kiev, though he is called Moscow artist, but he is originating from Ukraine. You can see the photographs of his granny on the right, his mom. You see Savitsky with his brother. You can see Savitsky's father and uncle, the photograph on the left, who was working as the head of protocol department in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Russia. And one of his uncles, by the way, Mikhail Florinsky, is again linked to England. He emigrated after the 1917 revolution to London, where he graduated from the High School of Economics. And then he moved to USA, where he was teaching until he retired in Columbia University. He was an expert on Russian economics and political sciences. But we didn't know anything about these things because Savitsky during his life never mentioned anything related to his aristocratic background or the issues of repression of his family members. Because in the Soviet times, it was very dangerous to speak about these things. And we started to build Savitsky's biography only after Savitsky's death. This is a great paradox. But thank you, Rosa, you showed the book I wrote about Savitsky. I was working on it only after his death. This was impossible during his life because he died in 1984, 1 year before Perestroika of 1985, when we could start speaking about our past openly. And the same relates, next one, to the collection that Savitsky was gathering. We also started to build the biographies of many artists only recently. But before we start speaking about the collection, I want to show you some works of Savitsky himself. He was a painter, he was an artist, and these are his landscapes of Caracal, Pakistan, which he loved. He fell in love with when he came there with this expedition. Next one, please. And he admired not only the antiquities that were excavated, not only the culture of semi-nomadic Karakalpaks that were unknown even in the Soviet Union, but he admired nature. And the next one. It was like Gauguin's story with Tahiti. The same we can compare with Savitsky and Caracal, Pakistan. This is Nukus, which looks nowadays quite different. Once it was a green city, but ecological disaster ruined its face. And we can see only Savitsky's paintings of 1950s. So when we want to understand what was the city like in the past. Next one. But Savitsky stopped to paint when he became a director of the Nukus Museum in 1966. So this is the first building of the museum, which Savitsky shared with the Museum of Local Studies. This building does not exist anymore. Next one. But in this former Ministry of Agriculture, Savitsky started to build the museum. And you can see very small rooms, which he covered by the collections that he gathered for the museum. Caracal folk art, then paintings, and all the masterpieces that he found in his activities were brought to Nukus, first from Tashkent, Samarkand, Moscow, and other cities to Nukus. Next one, please. When he wanted to make this museum at his own interest, with his own vision, he said that it will not be the model of the Tretyakov Gallery, which were spread all over the Soviet Union. He chose his own way. But at the same time, he was doing everything. He started with antiquities, So these are archaeological finds that he started to excavate himself. I mean, he created the archaeological team in the museum, and independently now he was digging and bringing collections to the Nukus Museum, because what was found by the previous team of archaeologists were taken to Moscow, to St. Petersburg, where you can see beautiful rooms with ancient Horizm, but they are in other places. Since Savitsky started his activities, we started to have our own collections. Next one, please. So this is one of the masterpieces found at Toprak-Kala, the hairpin in bronze, which is a real masterpiece, by the way, with a snake and pomegranate, a masterpiece of jewelry art. Another piece of ancient art, a top of female ossuary. It's the box for bones. According to Zoroastrian tradition, the dead were taken on top of the mountain, which we saw at the beginning of our presentation, Chilpik, Zoroastrian Dachem, and the dead were left until wild animals ate the flesh and the bones were put into the boxes. We have a fantastic collection of ossuaries in the museum. I just want to show you one piece of female portrait. They were individual portraits of each urn, each ossuary, and this is one of them. Next one, please. Unfortunately, we don't have much time to speak about all parts of our collection, moving to our main subject, but I will show you just some masterpieces of Caracal folk art also, which was the beginning of Sadisky's activities for the museum. He collected Caracal genetic bank of culture. It's about 9,000 objects. Next one, please. Of unique head decorations, jewelry. Next one, please. Tent bands, costumes. You see this exposition room with Caracal jewelry, an immense collection which gives us the understanding, not just the forms and the ethnographic understanding of them, but you can see the shapes, the compositions, the techniques, all their diversity. That was the idea of the collection. Next one, please. And fantastic wedding dress of Caracal women called kokoilek, blue dress, with fantastic embroidery on it. And the technique, the material of the dress is exactly the same like denim cloth, which is so popular in the world. So for us, it's the subject of teasing Americans that jeans were invented in Caracal, Pakistan 3 centuries ago. But the embroidery, of course, is the main subject of interest. It has matriarchy traditions with the names that are translated like armory, the armory that was worn by the Amazons. The ancestors of Caracal people, one of the ancestors, were Amazons that were described by Herodotus, Strabon, and many Greek historians. Next one, please. And women warriors, we have epic song, Kyrgyz, that describes the events of the past. And they were wearing these helmet-like head decorations. You can see unique Caracal women's head decoration that has the shape of a helmet that was worn by the Amazons. Next one, please. So there are so many interesting stories about this collection, and Caracal yurt, which is traditional living construction of these semi-nomadic people. Everything admired Savitsky and he contributed greatly to saving of this culture that was already vanishing when he came to Caracal, Pakistan, abandoning his apartment in Moscow, and he moved to Nukus to create this museum, to save the culture first of Caracal, and to educate, next one, to educate first group of Caracal artists that were only appearing in the 50s. You can see the painting of the first Caracal painter, Kıdırбay Saipov, who was both the friend of Savitsky and one of the first artists of Caracal, Pakistan. This is the portrait of his wife, done in a very interesting way. Next one, please. In a very decorative manner. And this is his sunset at the Amudarya River, the great oxus. So we don't have this kind of oxus anymore, unfortunately, due to ecological crisis, but we can see this beautiful sunset. And I feel very nostalgic because I remember this time when we were swimming with my husband at this river, and we see it only on this painting now. Next one, please. This is also the Amudarya, the oxus, the image done by Caracal sculptor Zholdazbek Kutimuratov. Oxus was a crazy river in the legends of the people of this area. It could flood everything around in the past. It could change its course. And the sculptor made the image of the Amudarya like you can see on it. This is the wooden sculpture, one of the first exhibits of the museum. It dates back to 1966-67. Next one, please. So Savitsky decided to educate Caracal artists. And for him, it was an excuse to open the Department of Fine Arts. So you can see very diverse collections that he started to bring to Nukus to educate Caracal artists and to see what their predecessors in Tashkent, Samarkand, or in Moscow were doing. And he concentrated on the art of 1920s, which he regarded to be the peak of art in the Soviet Union, but it was neglected at that time. It was totally ignored, and moreover, many people didn't dare to mention the artists of that time because of the Stalin's purges. So you see some of the rooms, including Fernand Léger's collection of world masterpieces that were given as a gift by his wife, Nadia Léger. And these high-quality collections were the source of inspiration for Caracal artists. Next one, please. But Savitsky is known now in the West by art community, by like a great patron of Orientalist school of painting. What do we mean by this? We know that in Uzbekistan, at the beginning of the 20th century, there was a very powerful, very bright, brilliant school of artists who came to Uzbekistan from all parts of Russia. Some of them were originating from Uzbekistan, like Alexander Volkov, whose painting we see. Next one, please. And Volkov is internationally recognized now. Well, the British community know that Christie's auctions sold some of his paintings for very high prices. And this is so exciting because during his lifetime, he was accused in formalism. He was not given job. He was starving with his family. We contact his children and we know all the stories of the difficult times for the family when this artist was accused and ignored. Thanks God he was not arrested, but he was not recognized, and many paintings were damaged when Savitsky came to the family and took more than 100 paintings. So can you imagine this treasure that the Nukus Museum possesses now. So you see, next one please, just a few of his fantastic works, starting from cubistic, futuristic, up to socialist realism, but fantastic socialist realism, with very strong input of Uzbek culture. He was called, though he was Russian ethnically, he was Uzbek in his blood, as one of the Turkish poets called him. What is also interesting, I know Francesca was interested in female art. She was asking the questions and the subject of women in art. We will touch this subject some minutes later, but I want to show you these happy faces of Uzbek women, the period of emancipation, women's liberation, how they were putting off their paranjas. You see at the background, women still very shy with their paranjas. Veils are open, but still they have them. So it was a very exciting process in the history of Uzbekistan, which was also reflected by Volkov. Next one. And what is interesting, they really believed in the revolutionary changes. That's why their art was sincere. This is Mikhail Kurzin, maybe more ironic attitude to the subject of old and the new, all these revolutionary changes. So he is a bit satirical, sarcastic about old style wives covered with paranja, and the young one with his green stockings, but he was criticized for this kind of art. Next one, please. But being an avant-garde artist, he had his own vision. You can see how he must have done these Uzbek impressions when he came here after being under the influence of great avant-garde artists like David Burlyuk, Vladimir Mayakovsky, and many others. Next one, please. But for his very, how to say, he was a Siberian, very open man. He could speak directly about and criticize the authorities sometimes. This is one of his satirical works with a very interesting history behind it. We have only the top of it, but the lower part has not survived, and there is a big story behind this painting. So unfortunately, we don't have time, but maybe some of you know it. Kurzin was arrested for political reasons, and he spent more than 20 years in exile. And when he was liberated, he survived only 1 year when he created fantastic still lifes with food. Next one, please. This is Nikolay Karakhan, another brilliant personality who came from Nagorno Karabakh, which is now a very conflicting area, but the family came also 1 century ago. They moved to Uzbekistan. The land was really tolerant and gave shelter to many people, including such people like Karakhan, Yeremyan, many artists of Armenian origin. So he created fantastic subject of socialist realism already, but in a very peculiar manner with this exotic monuments of Bukhara, but it's water pipeline construction. Next one, please. And he was one of the best colorists. Benkov, he came from Tatarstan to Uzbekistan, and he was fascinated by Bukhara. This is Oshkhona, a tea house in Bukhara. Next one. And Labi House, which is a brand of Bukhara, was the subject of his main interest. He spent hours at Labi House, and this is one of the autumn landscapes with autumn leaves and special atmosphere done in the style of French Impressionism by Benkov. who was one of the leading artists of Uzbek School of Painting. There was a group of artists that were trained by him, and up to now they work in the manner of Pavel Binkov. Next one, please. Many artists stayed in Uzbekistan and contributed greatly to the Uzbek School of Art. But many artists of European origin visited Uzbekistan and they contributed with their impressions. Savitsky collected everything related to Uzbekistan. This is a Moscow artist, Vasily Rождественский. He visited Uzbekistan only once or twice, and it's 1926 portrait of an Uzbek man. Next one, please. Ruvim Mazel, who studied in Germany, who worked together with Chagall and studied with him, but he returned to Turkmenistan and he contributed to the Turkmen School of Painting. Next one, please. A fantastic Ural Tansykbaev, who was Kazakh by origin, but he lived all his life in Uzbekistan, and he was influenced so much at the early stage by French post-impressionism, by Fauvism, and he is one of the best colorists in the Uzbek School of Painting, and there are many followers nowadays by Tansykbaev. We have the biggest collection of early Tansykbaev in the world. Not in Tashkent, not in Kazakhstan, but in Nukus Museum, you can see early Tansykbaev's works, which are really a pearl of the collection. Next one, please. Usto Mumin, another brilliant personality, which is very different, who was very much under the influence of the Uzbek School of Miniature, but we must remember that he graduated from Kazimir Malevich studio in Moscow and then came to Samarkand, and he penetrated into the culture of Uzbek people. He studied not only miniature architecture, he studied dances, he studied traditions. He became Muslim himself and took the pen name Usto Mumin. He was a fan of these angel-like boys, and he created the gallery of them in 1920s, which Savitsky managed to commission during Soviet times. And it was a subject of big criticism for this big eroticism, you know, too much attention to exotic side of life of local community, which was not greeted by the Soviets. And Usto Mumin was arrested. So up to now, we don't speak openly about the facts of his biography, unfortunately, but Savitsky was a pioneer of buying his works during Soviet times. Next one, please. Viktor Ufimtsev, the leftist artist of Uzbekistan, he came in 1923 with the ideas of innovative art, you know, revolutionary art. They wanted to create new art in Central Asia. And all the ideas of Russian avant-garde were put on the local basis. They were enriched by local impressions. So we see fantastic experiments in the shape, in the materials, which are not traditional. This is cotton, straw, sand. Everything was mixed and new media were invented by him. Next one, please. A big group of women artists in Uzbekistan worked in the 20s, and the author of these two paintings dedicated to the life of Bukhara Jews was created by Elena Karavai, who came also in the 20s. We call her Chagall of Bukhara Jewish community. And she created the whole cycle, both in canvases and wax on paper. Next one, please. This is Kovalevskaya. Next one, please. Nadezhda Kashina, the artist from Moscow, her Samarkand subject. Next one, please. Also her Registan Square in Samarkand. Next one. Just a moment. So we will see also some other women artists' works, but again, coming back to the subject of women in art. This is the famous painting by Robert Falk. I think Elmira Gül spoke about this painting with her subject of Suzanne. Of course, we see this fantastic Suzanne background. That was one of the interests of the author. But we see the beautiful portrait of the Uzbek young lady, which was given not from the exotic point of view, but in a harmony with everything that was around. This was Robert Falk's approach to Central Asian subject. He felt the wisdom of this land, and he tried to translate this understanding of Central Asia in his paintings. But it's interesting that his wife recollects how difficult it was to paint women. And the same, next one, please. We can say about the painting Ubaida by Vasily Rождественский, who also, he came 20 years before Falk made this painting. And at that time, it was difficult to convince to find models, Uzbek models. And there were big negotiations with the family to allow for Ubaida, this was the name of the lady, to pose for the artist. And the same atmosphere of harmony and the air and all the beauty of this land and people was put into this painting by Vasily Rождественский. Next one, please. So these were first Orientalistic subjects of Central Asian art that attracted Savitsky very much when he started to build the collection. But at the same time, Savitsky couldn't pass by anything interesting, and his idea was to show objective artistic life. That's why we see very avant-garde light trend in art by Vasily Lysenko. This is his self-portrait and the real photograph of him. Next one, please. And Vasily Lysenko, a Tashkent artist, next one, please, who got his education in Leningrad in Kazimir Malevich Institute of Art. He visited Filonov and many Russian famous artists in St. Petersburg, and he was very much under this influence. We can feel this in the painting. This painting has become the icon of the Savitsky Museum. And I mentioned several times it was not the choice of the museum, it was visitors' choice. They decided it to be the most popular painting of our collection, not only because it's so strong, but because the story behind it, the biography of the artist who was repressed and broken by the regime. He never continued to paint after he was arrested and spent some years in the prison. This biography has become the symbol of the museum, and the conflict of the regime and the artist is the metaphor of this painting. Next one, please. Well, we finished with Uzbek group of artists, And Savitsky continued to build the collection, and мы уже листаем просто времени нет. The artists from Moscow, which were not known, who were not recognized, they could spend some years in France, like Ritsko, and be recognized in France, but nevertheless, they were not recognized in Moscow. Next one. This is Vera Przisieckaia, who is the spiritual leader of Amaravella group, Russian Cosmism. You can see this group integrally in the Nukus Museum only, because this phenomenon in Russian art is not represented so fully anywhere else in the former Soviet Union, because almost all the members of the group were arrested and some of them were shot. Vera Przisieckaia was also, she died in exile. By the way, the link to England. Her husband was Piotr Uspensky, mystic philosopher who immigrated to England and is buried in Sari, in the county of Sari. But in the Soviet Russia, they were not recognized. Their philosophical, mystical vision of art was not greeted. And Savitsky had vision, had feeling to real art, and this Russian cosmism was understood by him already in the 70s. Next one, please. This is also one of the member of the group. Next one. Bulldozer Exhibition, the famous event in Russian art. Russian underground art of 1960s, 70s that is so popular now in the West. We have brilliant collections in Northern Dodge, New Jersey Museum of this artist, by the way. And Savitsky was the only museum director who dared to buy these paintings. Of course, maneuvering, calling the paintings with different names. He never mentioned Bulldozer Exhibition, which was a taboo in the Soviet Union. He called it a walk in the park. With this innocent name, he could pay to the widow for the painting. Next one, please. Another discovery of Savitsky, more than 2,200 works of Arkady Stavrovsky, fantastic artist, not shown in any Soviet and now Russian museums, only in private collections, some pieces. Next one, please. This is his Genghis Khan, by the way, very extraordinary feeling. Next one. This is his 1930-17 famous guitar and mask. The next one. Next one. This is also him. And this is Shevchenko, one of the pearls of our collection. The famous, there are stars in our collection like Shevchenko, next one, Lyubov Popova, but at the same time, unknown names like his pupil, Suryaev, who was working in the cinema production, but was doing this kind of rock and roll subjects, which were also recognized by Savitsky and brought to the Nukus Museum. The next one. Komarovsky, Count Komarovsky, killed in 1937 for his religious attitude to Christianity. This is his self-portrait and family portrait. We even didn't know that this is him. No information existed. Savitsky never mentioned anything. We know a lot of things only now. Keeping this collection, we had sometimes no idea about the authors of these brilliant paintings. Next one. Oh, and woman artist, the Amazon of Russian avant-garde, Lyubov Popova. She is known in the whole world. We are proud to have several of her works in our collection. By the way, she visited Samarkand and created fantastic Bibi Hanun mosques sketches for the textile industry, but they were never published. I haven't seen them, but we know this from her biography. And we have both very well-known names and quite unknown names, as I mentioned already. Sorry, we have no time left, and I must finish my very brief presentation about the collection, and I will be happy to answer all your questions.
Thank you very much, Marinika. It was a fascinating lecture. So interesting. All you want to do afterwards, just go and see it in real, because this is, I believe, just the tip of the iceberg of all the treasures which Savitsky Museum has in Nukuz. Thank you so much. So questions. We have a question from Giulio Ravizza. Can you please make some examples of Savitsky changing the title of a painting to lower the risk of being accused of anti-Soviet behavior? I'm aware of the painting representing a gulag being presented like a painting of Nazi concentration camps, as well as the painting of the Bulldozer Exhibition. Could you please make other examples?
Yes, there is a story with Mikhail Shimyakin, probably you know this name. He was also regarded to be dissident artist in the Soviet times. He was kicked out of the Soviet Union. He first moved to France and then to USA. And now he is again back to Russia and he is recognized. But at that time, when Savitsky decided to buy his paintings, it was so risky to even to pronounce this name without mentioning recording the name in the museum registers and documentation. So he was called NH in Russian, неизвестный художник, that means unknown artist. So museum curators know this term, which is applied to the artists of the 16th, 17th century art when it sounds natural, but it was really confusing to apply the name in the 20th century. But there are still some unknown artists in our collection, and we must decipher who are behind these NH, unknown artists.
Amazing. We have two thank yous from Shahina Mirjonova and Francesca, and some other questions from Alison Nunn. Are there any plans to exhibit some of the paintings in galleries overseas? Interesting question, Marinika.
Yes. I must say that during my work in the museum, we were getting tens of proposals after the independence period, when this information started to be spread in the world. But those years it was very difficult to arrange the exhibitions, though some happened. And I know that now with the new reforms, with the success of a recent exhibition in the Pushkin Museum 3 years ago during the visit of our president to Russia, it was again a great push for the popularity of the museum. And the museum is getting a lot of proposals to arrange exhibitions abroad. Of course, now we face difficulties with this pandemic situation, but I hope in a year or two this can be put on the agenda again.
Well, I'm sure it will happen after the COVID, because the world needs to see the paintings of the museum. Next question from Francesca Tumbling. Were there any Caracal packs that became artists, either male or female?
Yes, we have We have a group of Caracal artists. In fact, we have already 4th generation of Caracal artists after they started to work in the 50s, 60s. And we have Galia Abdurrahmanova, we have, ethnically maybe we had Albina Shpadi, but we regard her as Caracal artist because she dedicated her life to Caracal Pakistan and lived there until her death and contributed greatly, not only to paintings, wax on paper, but textiles, theater decorations. She made costumes for the movies of Caracal people. We have the only woman sculptor, Damigul Berdimbetova. We have, several of them now working in arts.
Mm-hmm.
If I understood your question, or you meant something else, Francesca?
Francesca?
Yes, I'm just coming.
Are you satisfied with the answer?
Yes, I'm just curious to know, are there, any Uzbeki female artists as well as Carol Kalpak?
Well, of course, in Uzbekistan, Tashkent is a big cultural center. Samarkand, Bukhara. I was speaking about Caracal, Pakistan, where the museum was located, but in Tashkent, where we have Academy of Arts, College of Arts, Institutes of Arts, a lot of young ladies are studying, graduate from them, and they contribute greatly to arts. You can find their works in the galleries, in the museums, and there are many of them now. It's very different from what it was in the 20s, when the group was formed by the people who came to Uzbekistan and started this art. Now we have a lot of their followers in Uzbekistan.
Thank you very much, Marinika.
Thank you.
Next question is from Julia Ravitsa. How could you understand the real author of paintings after Savitsky's death? Did he leave a parallel document with the actual authors?
Once again, Rosa,
I think he probably meant the artists, not the authors. Yeah. How could you understand the real artist of paintings after Savitsky's death? Did he leave a parallel document with the actual artist names?
A very, very interesting question. Well, when Savitsky was collecting the paintings, it was already 60s, 70s. Some of the artists died already, but some were still existing, and he contacted some of them directly. But most of the owners of the paintings were their relatives, either widows or children or nephews or some other relatives or owners. And Savitsky himself, you see, it was very risky, we understand now, to put everything on the paper those times. That's why a big portion of the information disappeared or went away with Savitsky himself when he died. And for us, it was a great challenge to rebuild the biographies of the artists. And we were contacting the same owners who were alive. Up to now, we are doing this job. Thanks God, now we have internet, which is regarded to be either evil or very good thing, but in this respect, it's really very fruitful for us, being so far from the sources of information. We find a lot of information in the open sources, in the archives which are published in internet, or we still contact the owners and their descendants. For example, Volkov's sons, one of them died this year, unfortunately, in the age of 90, but the other one is, thanks God, in good shape, and he is a great source of information, not only about their father, but about the whole Uzbek School of Art of 1920s. And we still do a big job in this respect. Many people contact us and they help us with the information they found now, and they share it with us, and they can come to Nukus and also work in our archives, which are very rich and which give a lot of information, which we now publish.
Mm-hmm. Amazing. So is it open access to archives, if I may ask?
Of course, you must get a permission from the Ministry of Culture in Tashkent. We still have very, how to say?
Rigid procedure.
System of subordination, and you have to apply to the Ministry of Culture to get permission, but this is possible. It's easier these days than before, I must say.
Fantastic. It's very encouraging for researchers who wants to see the archives, I believe. Next question is from Rene Pfister. Thank you, Mrs. Babanazarova, for your fascinating presentation. I think there would be strong interest in Europe and the USA to see the antiquity collection. If you need any help with planning touring exhibitions, do get in touch. So that's a proposal for you, Marinika, about collaboration with an art curator from UK, Rene. Marinika?
Thank you.
Thank you very much. From Anara Forrester, who is, by the way, daughter of a famous artist from Kazakhstan, Tverdokhlebov. Probably you know him. Anara says, thank you very much to Marinika for such informative and interesting presentation, and British-Uzbek Society for organization. Thank you very much, Anara. From Liber Art, oh, it's Vesna. Could you please clarify the concept of the collection? Because I believe that it's about Uzbekistan art and artists, but there are other arts from Mesopotamia to Russian revolutionary and French modern art. Marinika, do you need any clarification about this?
I can explain. I understand what is meant in this question. And this is due to the nature of our founder, Mr. Savitsky, who was so passionate about any art. And yes, he started first with saving Caracal culture, as I mentioned. He started with antiquity. He started with antiquities, ethnographical collections, then Uzbek art of the beginning of the 20th century. But due to his sensitivity to any art in general, he was so well educated. You know, he was given good education. Since early childhood, he appreciated values of spiritual art, artistic world, and he tried to bring anything he could see on his way. For example, when he visited one of his owners, collecting Tarasov, the famous part of our collection, more than 1,000 paintings of this unknown in Russia artist, he saw the beautiful 200 kilo sculpture of the famous sculptor Kamenkov, who made a tombstone for his son when he died. But he called this as a peak of his creation. You don't see anything in Moscow like this. But he saw it in this owner's house, and he prayed for them to give this piece to the Nukus Museum. They couldn't resist, and he bought it in 1980, this 200 kilos piece of Russian art, which has nothing to do with the profile of the collection, arrived to Nukus. You can see it in our exposition if you go there. Fantastic piece. The same with this Mesopotamian and other things, which were part of Fernand Léger's collection, which were given as a gift to the Nukus Museum, thanks to Savitsky, because he wanted Caracal community be part of the World Heritage. It's not only the privilege of those who live in Paris to appreciate the art. He believed that Caracal young generation and artists should also see the quality art. And that was his mission. Though we are regarded to be the collection of Russian avant-garde in the West, but this is not so. You can find a lot of non-profile objects like this Moscow underground art of 1960s, or some, German vases, Saxonian vases of the 18th century. He couldn't pass by anything. He was bringing and bringing. That's why when he died, we had a lot of debts, as you know from the story of the museum, which we were paying out. He couldn't pass by.
So yeah, he had a great feel for real art, like very intuitive.
That's what our museum is called sometimes, you know, the Louvre of the desert, because you can find anything in it, not only this famous avant-garde collection of local art, or Uzbek art.
Thank you very much, Marinika. There is the next message from Helen Kirvan. I just wanted to say also what a fascinating presentation this is, and to thank you, Marinika, and the British-Uzbek Society. Thank you very much, Helen, for your nice words. From Francesca Tumbling, thank you again for a brilliant talk. I hope Marinika will be able to do lots more. I have to leave now, unfortunately. Thank you, Francesca, for being with us. From Helen Kirvan, it was especially interesting to hear about the life stories, the life histories of the artists, their backgrounds, and the challenges they had. Thank you, Helen. Kamola thanks you as well. Thank you. From Helen, and how do they manage to keep such high quality work going in difficult circumstances? That's an interesting question, Marinika, to you from Helen. How do they manage to keep such high quality work going in difficult circumstances?
Oh, sorry to interrupt, Rosa. It was more, not a question, actually. I was just, no, it's just that I was, one can only imagine the struggles that the artists had. And and I think Marinika has helped us to understand how the courage of the artists and their resourcefulness in keeping going and producing such incredibly high work, in a high standard of work in such difficult circumstances. So that's just something which I think came across in Marinika's amazing, absolutely amazing talk. So thank you, that's all.
Thank you, Helen, for your clarification. Sorry, I didn't get it straight away. Message from Lindsay Ferrari. Thank you so much, Marinika. A wonderful talk. I have learned much more, a deeper understanding. I will look for the books that Rosa mentioned earlier. You are indeed a treasure. Your passion for this collection is contagious. Thank you. That's very true.
Thank you.
It's well summed up. From Nafisa, Marinika, as usual, so interesting. Thank you. From Vesna, thank you very much for your explanation and more detailed answer. Message from Mini Rolband. This was a fascinating talk. Thank you so much. I really hope to be able to see this museum one day. From Ali Yor, from the embassy, thank you, Marinika. From Eva Novikova, it was an absolute pleasure to see and listen to this wonderful presentation. I hope this is the first presentation of many more to come. Looking forward to seeing you soon in Uzbekistan. Thank you, Eva.
Thank you.
Message from Julia Ravisa. Thank you, gracias, merci. Thank you very much. So we still have time, about 13 or 10 minutes. If you have any more questions or you just want to have informal talk, please go ahead. Message from Rene, thank you for inviting me. I have to leave now. I hope to visit museum and site soon. Best wishes. Thank you, Rene. I'm glad that you were able to join us, and I hope to see you either in London or in Nukus. Any more messages? Any more questions? Oh, a message, sorry, question from Mimi Rolband. Could we have the name of the final artist, please?
Sorry, once again.
Could we have the name of the final artist, please? The final artist, последний художник, о котором вы говорили. Его имя.
This is Любовь Попова. Любовь Попова.
Mimi, this is Любовь Попова, a female artist with the Russian name, Russian first name and Russian last name. Любовь Попова. Thank you, Marinika. Message from Alison Nunn. I saw a film at Christie's some years ago about the museum, but cannot remember the title. Marinika, is probably that title which you mentioned about Louvre, the title of the film which was shown at Christie's some years ago.
The Desert of Forbidden Art, you mean this one?
Yes, I think that's what it is. The Desert of Forbidden Art, which was created by American, I believe, by Americans.
Amanda Pope from Los Angeles. By the way, they screened it up to now, and they had 2 screenings in November in America, and it's still a great success. It exists for 10 years, this movie, and it won many prizes at international film festivals, and this created a route from Seattle, where a touristic company brings American tourists to Nukus after they demonstrated this movie several times. So this really popularized the collection very much, and it's done so well, you know, with being Ben Kingsley and beautiful musical interpretation. But I want also to say that we have another interesting documentary by Uzbek producer Ali Khamraev, which is called Savitsky's Passion. It's also in internet. It also gives information to people.
Is it in Russian or in English, Ali Khamraev's film?
Both versions, in Russian and English. You can find
and it's really available on internet, did you say?
Yes. Savitsky's Passion.
Savitsky, sorry?
Passion, Strast, Savitsky.
Oh, Savitsky Passion. Right, okay.
It is on YouTube in Russian with English subtitles, just as a note.
Have you seen it?
Yes, several times.
Okay, I haven't seen the English version, but I know they made something.
No, it's in Russian language, but it has English subtitles. I didn't find a version which was like spoken in English or dubbed in English.
I can check, Giulio. I will find out.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Marinika, one question from me, if you don't mind. I'm very curious about your project with Gérard Depardieu, because I believe there will be some new film coming out, and it's a very fresh new project. It would be interesting to know a little bit more, because he is such an interesting figure. And I was wondering how he got engaged with Savitsky Museum. What brought him to Savitsky Museum?
Well, it was 1 year ago when they came to shoot a movie. Probably you know that Gérard Depardieu was selected by our national touristic agency as a person ambassador of tourism of Uzbekistan in France. And they decided to make a movie, and his producer, who visited our museum 8 years ago, was under great impression of the collection of the Savitsky Museum, and probably he introduced Gérard Depardieu to the story of the Savitsky Museum, and they invited me to come and give a consultation to Gérard Depardieu. And I haven't seen yet this movie. It was shown at the French television recently. We saw only the short trailer, but we spent some time in front of this bull by Vasily Lysenko, the iconic painting of our collection, which Gérard Depardieu called the Gioconda of the Nukus Museum. Well, we will see, but I know that he also visited the Aral Sea. He flew in the helicopter and spent some time in Caracal backyard, and he was also under big impression of this community life and philosophy of the life of these nomadic in the past people. So we will see. We expect to see something interesting in his interpretation. But I must say that we have some stereotypes about some stars, movie stars, and I must say that Depardieu has broken all the stereotypes I had about him when he started to speak about the art. I didn't know that he is so sensitive in art, and he was speaking about contemporary art, and I shared his opinion. I don't like also some of the conceptual art of the present day, and we had some discussion on these things. I shared his views on the present day art, so it was interesting. I was surprised.
Amazing. Thank you, Marinika, for sharing the story about Gérard Depardieu. I'm sure everyone is looking forward to see it when it's available on internet or somehow. It would be interesting to see his way of presenting his impressions about Savitsky Museum. We have one more message from Vinayak Nagarai. I'm sorry if I didn't pronounce it correctly. Dear Marinika, this was an absolutely fantastic talk, as always. Every time I attend one of your talks, I'm inspired to visit the museum again and take a fresh look. Your passion is infectious, as others have said. I'm lucky to still live in Tashkent, so it's time I started planning my next 4th visit following this talk. Thank you. That's a very, very nice message. Thank you very much, Vinny. We have about 4 minutes left. So if you have, if you want to make any final comments, please do so. And maybe, Luis, you would like to say something. From me, I want to say thank you very much, Marinika, for your fantastic lecture, for your time, for your dedication, for your infectious passion. It was an amazing talk, and I'm really looking forward to seeing you and meeting you in real when I'm in Uzbekistan again, when the COVID is over. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And for me, it was a great pleasure to speak about the museum. Of course, I feel a bit confused that I couldn't tell you as many stories as possible concerning the paintings we showed, but Maybe one day we meet in the Nukus Museum, and I will be happy to share my knowledge with you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Marinika. Luis, would you like to say something?
I would also like to add my thanks as well. It was a fascinating discussion. We had a presentation a month ago by Elmira Gul on ICAT. I think it's very much in the same vein as that there is such a wonderful fusion of historicism and modernity. You see that in these pictures there, as you did in the ICAT designs. And I wonder why sometimes this isn't more featured in promotions of Uzbekistan. I think often there's a sort of reliance and leaning on very historical notions, very historical images, whereas this is so refreshing to see, and it's fascinating to listen to you talk about it. So yeah, thank you from me as well. In terms of our next webinar, we have one more left before the end of the year. I think, as Rosa mentioned at the beginning, it's rather different than this. It's an English woman who journeyed across Uzbekistan on a motorbike. So she will present a slideshow and talk about her impressions from her travel across Uzbekistan on the 10th of December, but we will be sending out information about that presentation in due course. Yeah, so thank you once again, Marinika. Thank you to Rosa for sharing this. It's been a fascinating meeting.
It was wonderful. And let me thank again also the company, the Tashkent office of Denton's company, who very kindly helped us with the logistics for Marinika's lecture, and also with the technical connection. I also would like to thank Aliyor Tilavov, who is representing Uzbekistan Embassy in London, who always helps us with communications, because he always comes up with a very beautiful summary published on Uzbek media platforms about our events, which helps us to promote our event not only in the UK but also in Uzbekistan. Thank you very much, Aliyor, and I'm looking forward to your next summary of this event, which will be translated into English as well. There is one last message from Isabel addressed to Marinika. Dear Marinika, as always, you are an inspiration for so many people around the world. You make us feel we are part of a wonder. I had a technological problem and couldn't be present the whole talk, but I am going to see the recording. My warmest regards from Lima. Thank you so much. Rosa, thank you for the invitation. Impeccable organization. Thank you very much, Isabel.
Thank you.
And flowers. Oh, can I also thank Mansoura, a young lady from Denton's Tashkent office who helped us with organizing and technical support for Marinika. And I think we also wanted to hand over flowers, to hand in flowers, Marinika. Where is Mansoura?
I'm here. I'm here.
I think I saw a bunch of flowers there, a bouquet of flowers.
You mean on the screen?
No, the real flowers. They're on the table. I saw them.
No, it was not the flowers. It's like our tables look like this.
Oh, I'm sorry about that.
Card for the coffee and tea for Marinika, and here all the IT things.
Okay.
Rosa, Mr. Lewis, I wanted to thank the whole team again. Everything was arranged very well, and I felt like at home. Thank you so much.
It's our pleasure.
Marinika.
It really is our pleasure. I hope we can repeat this next year. There's so much more to learn and to listen to. Thank you very much.
You. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Have a lovely evening and a nice weekend ahead. Thank you. Enjoy your weekend and be healthy. Stay healthy and well, which is very important nowadays.
Yes.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye now.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.